Good morning, everyone. I apologize for the slight delay. I was having some technical issues.
Not at all. Good morning.
If we've got a few other folks connecting right now, so we'll give them a moment. Okay. Looks like everybody's pretty much here. I'd like to call the health-related institution formula advisory committee meeting to order. Thanks for being here this morning. With all the nasty weather, it's probably good that we are remote as opposed to driving to Austin. So that's a positive. I am Michael Tremonti. I'm the chair of the committee. Please be aware that, again, as is previously been the case, this is being recorded and is being broadcast over the internet. So if you are not speaking, please keep your connection on mute, and please have cell phones silenced. If with that being the case, let's start with the roll call. Ms. Berger, if you would do the roll.
Of course. Okay. I'll start with Dr. Chase. I believe she did say she was traveling, but would have a representative here.
Jim Briggs here, representing Diane Chase.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Gomez-Leon.
Here.
Mr. Guajardo. I think your volume wasn't working, but I see you. Thank you. Ms. Harkey.
Here.
Okay. Ms. Harms. Okay. Dr. Lang, I believe he was traveling as well. Is there a representative?
Yes, I'm having trouble with my video, but this is Jessica Fisher representing Dr. Lang.
Great. Okay, Mr. Lewis.
Present.
Ms. Marin Hill. Dr. Moray.
Here.
Oh, Angela.
Here.
Okay, great. Mr. Mueller.
Here.
Ms. Nace.
Here.
Ms. Shear.
Here.
Mr. Tremonti.
Here.
And Ms. Withers. Is anyone here on behalf of Ms. Withers? Okay, let me just double check. Come back to Ms. Harms. All right, that's it. We do have a quorum.
Okay, with a quorum present, we will proceed. Item 4 on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. Let me turn it over to Mr. Guajardo for that.
Well, thank you, Mike, and good morning, everybody. So we share the minutes with everybody. Is there any comments about the minutes? If not, can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Thank you, Mike.
Second.
And thank you, Kristen. Everybody in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes. Back to you, Mike.
Okay, thanks so much. The this may be a really fast meeting, or given the conversation on the topic, it may drag on a little bit. But
Mike, don't let us down, Mike. You've got a track
Okay.
record. You know,
I hate being predictable. It's but we did send out, Melita did send out the draft documents put together so far. And my goal today, maybe it's a lofty one, would be to really look at the recommendations brought forward and in comparison to the charges, and we can continue on doing the wordsmithing and everything else, but I'd like to at least hopefully leave today thinking, okay, we've nailed down what the overall response is going to be per charge. And maybe that's overly optimistic on my part, but let's, boy, I violated my own rule. Sorry about that. Let's go ahead and start with item number or charge 2, and then we can circle back to the I&O and the formulas at the very end. And so our charge 2 was study and make recommendations for the appropriate I&O formula weights, including consideration of new specialty programs for inclusion. And Ms. Harkey, if I could get you to tell us the recommendation of the work group, and then we can determine the stance of the committee as a whole.
Certainly, Mike. You know, what we described the last time was we had taken the allied health programs for UTMB, for UT Health Science Center San Antonio and Texas Tech University Health Sciences Center, calculated a cost per FTE and for graduate versus undergraduate, and then compared the two, to come up with a differential. So what we are recommending then is an inflation of the rates for those allied health and nursing programs based on that particular calculation to be 1.48 would be the resulting weight for the graduate nursing, and 1.20 for graduate allied health. We all know that it depends on what kind of programs that you have in your calculation. Mike, do you want me to go ahead and speak to the meeting that occurred this week and what we may have to do? And Emily can jump in also and kind of give how do you want to address that?
Please do. Please do.
So Emily mentioned that there is a conversation going on, and Mike was on the call, I was on the call, obviously Emily and Jenny was on the call, related to, it was a conversation that we began really during a year ago or so about occupational therapy doctoral program and the physical therapy doctoral program are relatively the same programs, but one of them is funded at a professional rate and one of them is funded at a doctoral program. So we have programs that are doctoral programs that are funded as but they're really more doctoral professional programs. So I think it's best if Emily gives the overview, Mike, and then I can talk about the recommendation. I don't want to step on her toes there and botch what the intent of the coordinating board is.
Emily, if you wouldn't mind.
No, of course not. So like Penny said, we convened a group of stakeholders this week to kind of go into that topic that was raised regarding PTOT. And since that time, instead of just looking at those two programs, the Academic and Health Affairs Division at our agency took a comprehensive look at how all doctoral programs are classified. So they're either classified as a professional doctoral or as a research doctoral. And so why that matters for you all is that all research doctoral programs are converted to an FTE basis using 18 semester credit hours as the conversion factor. All professional doctoral programs are converted at a 24 semester credit hour conversion factor. So when the Academic and Health Affairs was reviewing all of the doctoral programs, they were also considering alignment with like federal guidelines. So as some of y'all know, there was some changes to research funding at the general academics this past session. And so the creation of a new research fund for that group required the coordinating board to define what is a research doctoral program. And proposed rules out there right now relating to that would have us align with NSF's definition of a research doctoral program. And so kind of in that context, when they reviewed, they found several programs that were maybe misaligned with the federal, with the NSF guidelines. And so some of those included OT, which is classified at the coordinating board as a research doctoral and is classified by NSF as a professional doctoral program. Another one was the DNP, the Doctor of Nursing Practice. So that's classified at coordinating board as a research when NSF classifies it as professional. So if the coordinating board was to move those programs from research to professional, all things being equal, no other changes, that would result in a loss of funding for those programs based on how the HRI model is built, because it would convert from an 18 factor to a 24 semester credit hour factor. So kind of in that backdrop, we wanted to holistically look at this issue and say, okay, first of all, policy-wise, does it make sense to align with NSF? And I think generally people felt, that yes, we should align across the agency, we should align with NSF, but we need to look at the funding implications as well, because the intent is not to remove funding or say that those programs deserve less funding than they have received in the past. So we also wanted to kind of open that conversation up with schools about, why are we converting doctoral programs on different factors, whether they're classified as a research or a professional? Is there a policy rationale to do that? Is it just the way it's always been done, and so it hasn't changed over time? Should we look at that to see if there is a reason that they couldn't all be converted at the same rate? Or is there another method that needs to be taken into account to adjust for the funding implications, which is where I think I'll kick it back to Penny, which is to talk about that issue. So happy to take any questions, or I don't know, Mike or Penny, if you want me to add more detail or you have more context.
Well, I guess the one question I would have on that is there a timeline in mind as to making some decision along which way we go? I think there was certainly concurrence that, yeah, it makes sense to have everything aligned from an NSF standpoint and all that. But it was the funding piece. And I was just curious if that was a decision that we would see being made in the next quarter or whatever else.
I think whatever recommendation that would be proposed would be kind of an addendum to the fact report that goes to our board in April. So we have a little more time. It doesn't, have to go with the recommendations that this committee provides to the commissioner in February. But it would be something we would have to bring to our board. So it seems logical that we would kind of pair whatever that recommendation is into that report when it goes up to our board. And then once our board considers and potentially adopts something, they would send it to the legislature by June 1. And then ultimately it'll be, obviously a legislative decision on how this all plays out.
Okay. Well, and for those that haven't been involved in the calculation process in this regard for graduate nursing, graduate allied health, what this means is really a recalculation using, should we go to the 24-hour route? There would be a recalculation of what really is the differential. And what we would see is, again, you've got all of a sudden you have a drop in FTSEs because you're going from 18 to 24 hours, but the same cost. So the multiplier would be greater. And I think ultimately that would be the sort of the key caveat here, is that this takes in consideration the current 18-hour structure. Should we go there, we may need to amend, or either that, another option is we actually calculate what that differential is in the event of that change, and also provide that way at least it's out there from a timetable standpoint. Now, again, Emily, I don't know how problematic it would be to come back and sort of amend our recommendation after the April meeting or not.
So the April meeting is kind of the time frame that our board adopts what will be the recommendations that go forward to June 1. But that being said, as everyone knows, there's a lot of work that still goes on before the legislative cycle or even before the LBB begins deliberations on the introduced budget. So, I think we can still continue that conversation as we're going, but
okay,
that's kind of some context.
Okay. So with that said, I'd like to move that, and again, let me back up. Any questions, or additional discussion that the committee would like to have regarding the graduate nursing and the graduate allied health? Yeah,
I would just add, I do think that it's going to be difficult for us to kind of finalize a recommendation in this report absent what the coordinating board's proposal for the alignment of the degrees with NSF on that. So if there's a way that we could potentially come back and insert a if then clause in our recommendation, that would be my recommendation, because this recommendation that we're looking at now, if the proposal goes through, won't even get us back to even sustaining the funding that's proposed to be lost. So that just gets us back to square one. I would like to have an opportunity to come back and really look at the new differential need for those cost programs if it does go to the professional status for most of those currently coded research programs.
Okay. So I guess, could I have a motion then to accept this with the caveat that upon resolution or change in the FTSE calculation for these programs, changing from research to professional, that these rates, that we accept the recommendation of the committee?
So moved.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Okay, boy, I was keeping me on pins and needles here. So we have a motion and by Michael and Lauren seconded, I believe. And if all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, any opposed? Okay, hearing none, we will move forward with that. We will certainly, the goal in mind would be to have the most accurate information as this gets finalized, and we will certainly keep everyone abreast of the calculation. Penny, I do think there's probably merit in having us do the recalculations ahead of time so we know what that would be, and we can certainly have that put forward, at least so it's either or.
Is that something that we want to have documented in our recommendation, Emily? Would that be, in my mind, there are two options: leave it as is, which is our current recommendation, that all doctoral professional programs be funded at 18 semester credit hours. That was one similar discussion. Or that all be moved and changed and funded at 24 semester credit hours per FTE. Is there a reason we could not put a paragraph in the addendum that we have at the back, which is our recommendation, and that way it's documented in that? Would that be an option? in the work group's recommendation is my question.
I think it certainly would make a lot of sense. Emily, I don't, again, we've made the slight caveat regarding the change in the recommendation. So at least that is referenced either way, and it is a source for the ultimate recommendation of the committee.
I mean, I think that makes sense. I'm not sure I fully followed Penny I thought it was either change the all doctoral to 18, or if you were to keep the current 18 versus 24, then you amend the rate on that. Is that, are we saying the same thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yes, we wouldn't amend the rate if everything went to 18. You're correct.
Yes. Yeah.
So it would only be if everything went to 24. You're correct.
Okay, and just to kind of be clear, I don't think there was ever a discussion that the current research doctoral programs be changed to 24. There certainly seems to be a national landscape that those are consistently recorded at 18.
Right.
Yeah.
And Emily, can I ask, is the group that met this week going to meet again to look at, or is that kind of discussion?
I think we're still kind of filtering through the kind of conversation that came up and thinking through next steps.
Okay.
So, but we're certainly, you know, as we kind of make clear to the group, we do want to hear your input. We want to make this a good, you know, policy driven and supported recommendation, whatever happens. But that being said, you know, taking into account what makes sense on the classification versus the funding implications. So open to conversations at any point, and, you know, happy to convene people as people think it's worthwhile.
Very good. Yeah, I wasn't in that meeting, but I was just curious if there was discussion related to, you know, the NSF recommendations compared to actual practice in HRI in terms of curriculum, and if there's a difference there in terms of, you know, how we really teach students, and if it's more aligned with research versus the professional curriculum wise.
Yes, there exactly was that conversation.
Okay.
Yeah. It actually was a very good conversation, and those topics all did surface.
Okay. Very good.
Angelica, you had a question?
Yes, thanks. To add to Lauren's question about the discussion that was had, appreciate it sounds like you had a lengthy discussion. Thank you for that. Was part of the discussion, another factor is health institutions maintaining, you know, some of the clinical space and facilities that are required for this training, that not all institutions, you know, maintain those types of facilities and bear that cost. So just wanted to add that into the discussion as well. I know this will continue. Excuse me, I'm under the weather, so my voice is a little rough this morning.
Okay.
So just asking that also be part of the ongoing discussion. This clinical costs.
Right, and thanks for joining us, Angelica. It's obviously there's so many other options other than this meeting, so it's
This
okay.
is the best, promise.
The highlight, I'm sure it's the highlight of everybody's day today. Okay, let's move on to charge 3. And this was the study and make recommendations on the treatment of health-related programs at general academic institutions co-located with health-related institutions. Michael, if you wouldn't mind bringing forward the recommendation of that work group.
Yeah, the recommendation was to I guess the best way to put that would provide a supplement outside of the formula is what the general academic institutions are recommending. And then we would be supportive of it. I think there are 2 key aspects that we wanted to make sure that it was new monies that were being used. Secondly, that there would be no harm to any of the current formulas, either on the general academic side or the HRI side. So I've talked with Emily and Mike about this, that we were going to take a mirrored supportive response. So you see that in the report. So I'll just stop there and see if there are any questions about that, and then make a motion to move the recommendation forward.
Okay. Questions or thoughts, concerns?
The one thing I did not do, and I don't know that it was appropriate for us to make a dollar recommendation in our report and what the supplement should be. I think that should actually come from the general academic institutions, since they ran those numbers. So that is absent in our report. I feel like we should be supportive of what the general academics are doing, and stop it there, and allow, because it's going to be a legislative decision on what that funding amount will be when they take this up.
Yeah, that's certainly something that I'd recommend as well. Is let's leave the numbers in their report. I don't want to hang our hat on basing their calculation on something.
Right.
Yeah, and I spoke with Daniel Harper, the chair of the academic formula advisory committee, and mentioned that to him, that we would not be doing that, but we'd certainly be endorsing their recommendation.
Correct. So with that, if there aren't any questions, I move forward the recommendation as written in our report.
Okay, do I have a motion?
Y'all are keeping me on pins and needles.
Yeah, I motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion from Kristen. Thank you so much.
Second.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, any opposed? Okay, hearing none, we'll go forward with that recommendation. On charge 4, which is the study and make recommendation on eligibility of remote sites for purposes of the small class supplement, if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to table that perhaps to our December 6th meeting that's currently scheduled. Because I'm trying to get a little more shape on that, but I'd like to in lieu of seeking a recommendation approval, I'd like to get some feedback. And that is, as we've gone into this, my hope would be there'd be some alignment between the small class supplement and the multi-campus adjustment used in the space projections or infrastructure formula. And I guess I would like your opinion on, should there be the alignment? Should there be a match at all times? Is there an expectation that the multi-campus adjustment would phase out after the small class supplement phases out at 200? Or perhaps maybe I just plant this seed and this is part of our conversation on the 6th.
I can tell you that I had always considered them separate. So I always thought the purpose behind the multi-class adjustment was more or less on the face of having a multi-campus location, whereas the small class supplement was in support of small class sizes and the additional costs associated to operating those. So
okay,
doesn't mean that that's the way it is. It's just means that was always my interpretation of it.
Okay.
I agree with Kristen. I think there's when you're looking at those physical campuses, that duplicate cost for a physical campus, the economies of scale don't necessarily pick up. And the truth is that you're looking at two completely different formulas also. And so I agree that the space model should not be impacted once you go over 200 students.
Okay. So is there, let me turn it around a little bit then. Should there be an expectation or if there's a small school supplement that there would be a multi-campus? I mean, I can understand where the small class phases out, leaving the multi-campus, but I guess what, and where I'm coming from is, as I look at the list that compares the two, I see schools that have small class supplements, and I'm certainly one of them, that don't have a multi-campus adjustment, even though they are unique campuses. And I think it's, the question should be is, should there be a process? And I think this is where we probably started the conversation of what should the process be for requesting this and making sure, and if there should be some alignment at times, then they're both addressed, as opposed to maybe one falling out through the cracks because one comes up through the space study and the other comes in through other means.
Mike, this is Angelica. I would support, looking at and developing a transparent process, that's applied across the board, and starting that discussion.
Okay. Yeah, it's, Kristen has put together a good document. I've probably mucked it up a little bit. And so, there's probably a third version out there that we can bring forward as far as a recommendation goes. I was probably looking at this a little bit differently, and Kristen makes a lot of sense, and as does Penny about the multi-campus, staying on after the fact, and that the two could be misaligned at some point in time, but we can certainly readdress that. And I'll, Kristen, if you don't mind, I'll work with you on that draft over the next week, so that when we meet on the 6th, we can have an updated version and maybe a recommendation.
Sounds good.
Okay, great. The last charge is, of course, the study and make recommendations on the use of mission-specific formula funding and health-related institutions. Tomas, if you would bring that one forward.
Sure, of course. Thanks, Mike. As we discussed last meeting, the committee has worked together in providing a historical document that accounts the background and context for the mission specifics. We shared that before with the full committee, and it's now included as attachment A in the email that Melita sent out. There is some pending work. We're working on a return on investment table that's being developed. That's trying to account for the growth in research expenditures across all the institutions to kind of show the legislature that, in a way, thanking them for their support and how it has impacted all our institutions. So once we get that worked out, we'll send that out to the committee. If there's any comments or edits about the document, please send that over to Melita. We're still taking edits. We're working on it, but I think we're finalizing and almost there. The committee recommendation, we're recommending the continuation of the formulas, but I would also add to the recommendation, propose an edit, that we're also recommending including the SB 30 appropriations in the 2026-27 base funding for all HRIs for the upcoming session. I know we discussed that before, and it's our desire. We're very thankful for the legislature in providing that funding, and we would like for that for them to consider continuing that in our base funding for next session.
Okay. Any thoughts or questions regarding the recommendation, including the SB 30 recommendation? Okay. I think we probably need to update the recommendation that we have listed. So if you don't mind, I'd like to table that one for possibly next week's follow-up as well. And hopefully we can finalize it at that point too. Okay. So let me circle back to charge one, which obviously is our primary charge of making the recommendation for the appropriate funding levels for the INO formula research enhancement, graduate medical education, and mission specific. As listed currently, what we've done is we have applied the inflation adjustment based on the medical CPI using 2019 as a base year. We are using, since the CPI actually doesn't exist beyond 23, we've used the average, and Melita, keep me honest here, the average of the 3 years moving forward, which is, I think, roughly 4% of, so the 23, 22, and 21 indexes, and applied that for the years going forward. We took an average of the 27 and 28, 26 and 27 amounts to calculate what the overall inflationary increase should be over 2019. Did I miss anything, Melita, or is that accurate?
I think that was right on. Again, it's the average of 26, 27 over 19. Yes.
Okay, great. And so that's the 19.2% that you see in the first table under charge one. It is slightly different than the infrastructure and research enhancement and graduate medical education because, and it's less than the other. The amount actually came out to 20.1, but because there was a slight adjustment, a less than 1% adjustment to the base rate for INO in this biennium, that's taken into consideration. So, year over year, there's not as large of an increase. The INO rates and Melita, I guess I do have a question regarding the graduate nursing and graduate allied health. Did we plug those new rates in?
Yes, those are included on the third tab. If you have the worksheet, or I can show it if you'd like. But yes, they are built in.
Okay. So with that in mind, again, that doesn't necessarily impact the base rates provided in the first table, but it certainly does provide the total formula increases that were taken into consideration that are on the second table. And that's, INO is it's a $375 million increase over the previous biennium. Infrastructure 74.9, research enhancement 22.9, GME 30.3, and the mission specific 124.5. So overall, it would be $628 million increase that we'd be recommending. So with that said, obviously the INO amount could change possibly I wouldn't imagine a great degree, because overall the math should work out fairly closely should the rates change, because it's it would be a smaller FTSE times a larger weight. And so mathematically, it ought to be pretty close, but it could change somewhat. Any questions or thoughts around the application of the inflation and the growth? It does. We have identified the growth metric of the various formulas, and obviously everybody, I think, has experienced an uptick in research, so we're seeing a significant increase in or growth on the research enhancement formula. The others range from 3 to 5%. We do still have a couple outstanding elements, and so I would say check your emails to make sure, see if you have anything from Melita to make sure that you've got your projections for the coming year into the equation. I think for those that, and there was only a couple numbers we were missing, we have plugged in the current information as opposed to what the projected is. So again, any questions, concerns, thoughts? Did we miss the mark? Is it something we need to factor in the overall calculation? Okay. Hearing none. Can I have a motion to move forward with the possible caveat that the overall funding may adjust for the change associated with charge 2? I have a motion by Penny, a second by Tomas. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, great. So that's obviously a significant amount of money, and hopefully the inflation can be taken in consideration this go round. It certainly, there's a lot of experience out there saying that that's a real issue for all of our institutions. Okay. As far as future meetings, as of right now, we have December 6th on the calendar, and the idea there was to have one, so soon, thinking that, okay, well, we'd have some markup come out of this, which of course it sounds like we do, and then we could have another version for everybody's review prior to that. I'm not so optimistic to think that we're going to be done at December 6th. And so as of right now, we had sort of a placeholder on January 10th. Should we need it? I think we need to go ahead and put that one on the calendar and plan on doing that, and with the goal of having the report finalized. So if nothing else, you have an opportunity to see a final draft. We are waiting for some stats that come generally from the AAMC, generally in mid-December or so, that we generally include in the beginning of the executive summary. And so again, hopefully we send out a close to final draft the 1st of January or so, give you an opportunity to really go through it, make comments, and ideally put us in a position to bless it on January 10th. Is everybody comfortable with that approach? Again, if doesn't mean it has to happen. It sounds like the the drop dead date is we need to have the report to the commissioner by February. So we'd probably meet, soon after the 10th if we didn't get it nailed down then. Any other thoughts, concerns, or questions? Okay, hearing none. I'd like
Can I request that the work group 2 committee stay on for just a few minutes, since we've already got everybody linked up, for us to regroup for just a second?
Certainly. With that in mind, I'd like to adjourn the primary. Emily, thoughts?
We are being broadcast to YouTube, so just to make you aware.
Oh, okay.
Let's
Well,
meet.
I'll send a Zoom link then for us to meet separately. So,
Okay.
all right.
Thank you, Emily. At this, I move. I make a motion for us to adjourn. Do I have a second? Tomas.
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. I apologize for running on 47 minutes. I'm slipping. Everybody will, but then again, we will be back in a week. So I will see you on the 6th. Thanks so much.
Thank you.